So I have not been able to get the computer to work today,
That's okay.
and it wasn't my fault. It was already that way, as you've experienced. So I kicked it. You know, I did all the things that you normally do to try to make it
Try
work.
turning it
The
on
tech
and
guy,
off.
half an hour and you're working on it, it's not gonna, doesn't.
Well, shoot.
They said that they have to actually take the computer apart to see what's wrong with it.
That's dumb.
So what I'll start with today is the quiz question. Yes, we're ready? Yes? So the quiz question I asked, as I recall, was, does the Earth go around the Sun? Does the Sun go around the Earth? If you've been emailing me, Wednesday night is the night I go out drinking with the guys. So
That's awesome.
Well, that's when I emailed you.
so I haven't checked email since
Before then.
actually just before then, because I was in my office just before I left to go down to the Villanova. We go to Villanova and share a bottle of wine, so it's not like we're doing a whole lot of drinking.
How posh.
We're mostly just discussing major issues. That sort of thing.
What was the quiz question?
So the quiz question, wasn't it? Does the Earth go around the Sun, or does the Sun go around the Earth?
What did Descartes invent? That was the question. That's what was on the blog.
You're looking on the blog, but that was for my early. I have another class which is early modern philosophy, and that quiz question was for them.
Oh, awkward.
But remember, I just graded your quizzes on that you send me one, so you're still right,
Oh, okay.
even if you're replying to the wrong quiz question, which is okay.
Either way, you're still learning, right?
But the question I asked, I thought as we were leaving, and I don't know how much I explained it. I remember you looking at me and say, "That feels like a trick question," and you're right. It is a trick question today, right? Galileo got in trouble. Copernicus, very carefully, Tycho Brahe.
This question like next class, or is it like a new week? Because I didn't answer the question. I'll answer it right now, though. If you want, like it.
Sure.
Okay.
What's your answer?
Oh,
But
okay.
still send me a response on the,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
remember I weigh them.
So I was going to use a metaphor, like you and a fat guy in a hallway, and when you walk, do you walk around the fat guy, or does the fat guy walk around you?
Yes.
So no. You walk around the fat guy. So that's my metaphor.
I am the fat guy. So.
Oh, no, I see heavier.
Oh, well, thank you.
Just scary.
Yeah, I think we're talking about like giant gargantuan, like has to rest his arms like this kind of guy. You don't have to do that, seriously.
Well, I'm working on that.
It's fine.
gotten
Maybe
that
you'll
far
get there
yet.
one day,
Some more beer.
but you're not there yet. More wine,
No, I don't think wine will do that.
really?
Yeah.
How
It's
much
got lower
wine?
calories.
Pizza will do that.
Pizza and-
Spaghetti.
Enough
Now you're
wine will
making
do
me
that.
hungry.
I was
or
gonna
I'm
say,
making
I was
me
like,
hungry.
I'm pretty sure wine's pretty sugary. If
Well,
you
so
have enough
here's-
of it.
Here's how I would present this. Obviously, historically, we go back, and even the Greeks had differences of opinion over that. As far as I know, none of the educated, even Aristotle, knew that the earth was round. So Columbus wasn't trying to prove that the earth was round. I don't know where that crept into kind of like the popular consciousness. If it did you ever think that? No? Okay. Their argument was over how big it was, right? And Columbus was wrong, but fortunately there was a whole continent in the way that saved him from dying in the Pacific, right? But the question over whether or not the Earth was the center of the universe, that was pretty accepted by Aristotle and everyone that accepted Aristotle. In fact, that's why the church thought it was a matter of faith. That even the Bible will basically support the idea that the earth is fixed in the center of the universe. And one of the quotations, although I don't see how it actually forces this issue was Joshua's, battle, and the sun stopped until he had enough time to defeat the enemy. So the sun stopped in the sky, indicating that the sun is moving in the sky, right? Well, actually, you could stop the sun even if it's not the sun that's moving, it's the earth that's moving, right? You could do that if you're God, I suppose. But in any case, it was accepted that the earth was the center, so you could look at what was called the Ptolemaic system at the time, right? Ptolemy was, and the problem was their equipment was getting good enough that they could measure the movements better, and as a result, the Ptolemaic system required what they called epicycles. They believed that all the movements in the heaven were circular, because as you move up from the earth, things get more and more perfect. And so the only shape they thought was perfect was the circle. That's why your aura is supposed to be a circle. If you see like the halos and the artwork, the saints, their halo is always supposed to be round, right? And they even figured it was larger than your body because you could sense things around you. So they thought your soul was basically out a little bit from your body and would be round. So that's, and by the way, it should be colorful, I suppose. And I understand, does anybody have synesthesia or see auras? There are people, you don't want to admit it, maybe not. I understand there are people that can actually see them.
Does it count if you think you've seen a ghost before?
I suppose.
Because I'm pretty sure I saw a ghost before in my house.
My wife is scary. I mean, because of what she can do.
It's not all
it's
not.
Let me explain.
That's yeah.
She like we go to the symphony, which by the way is Saturday night if you're interested in the symphony, and she'll like sit down next to me and she says, "Oh, that violinist is gray." I'm like, "Oh, doesn't look gray to me." She said, "Yes, he looks gray. And that means he's going to die soon. In the next symphony, he's gone."
What?
And that's like,
I mean, you could just.
He right? Yeah, he might have just taken a break.
that's scary. That's what I mean.
What are they called? People that can see auras.
Well, synesthesia means your senses blend together. So, like if you see print, you see colors with it.
Yeah.
One of my daughters does this. When she sees, or if she hears a sound, like there's colors, so like the senses kind of interact with one another. But there are people that can see like your heat signature, and they thought that was your soul. And now, of course, we have cameras that could do it, so we can take pictures of your heat signature. We know that it changes depending on your mood and stuff like that. So the idea that the halos were the aura or soul around the body that you see in the artwork, that was based on what they thought was really there. And it was round, and that's because round is the perfect shape, because all points on the edge are equidistant from the center. So round, they thought. So if it's up in the heavens, it should be perfect. It should be round. So of course, when they saw the moon, I can look at the moon from here and can see mountains and craters and stuff on the moon, right? We can all see that, right? So you know that the moon's not a perfect surface. But they argued over that because they thought it should be. The one system, and I'd be using the screen for that, has the Earth in the center, and then the moon, and then I forget what the sequence was. Was it Venus was next? With the sun. And of course they didn't have all the planets, and they didn't have any of the other moons because they didn't know about them, etc. But they did have what they thought were epicycles. So they thought that these were like crystal spheres, that were holding these planets, or they were actually points of light shining through. Right? And they thought the crystal spheres were like going around in a perfect circle to try to explain why it seems like they go back and forth. Tycho Brahe gives us the Tychonic system, which if I had that, you could look up the Tychonic system if you're there, and what you'll see is that you have the Earth, the Moon, and then the Sun, and then around the Sun you have all of the other planets. How do they go? They must go around like this. They're going around the Sun. So that would be essentially the mirror image of, if you take telescopes and you look out and you see where everything's moving, and you assume that the Earth is not moving. And it's absolutely obvious, right? You can imagine the cardinals all yelling at Galileo in the trial. It says, "What do you mean the Earth moves?" No, it doesn't. That's so obvious. How could you say that?
Such a great
Right?
argument.
If you think about it, right?
No.
And I see all the stuff moving around. Obviously the Earth is stationary in the middle, right? So Galileo's coming up with the argument that Copernicus must be right, that we've got a solar system, right? So you got the sun in the middle. Notice I'm making it big. Of course, they didn't think it was so big. Thought it was a little ball of fire out in the sky, right? Because look, you can just see it. It's just right. And then all the planets going around, etc. With the moon, and of course Galileo with his telescope, which he discovered. Well, he didn't discover it. He stole the idea from someone else. Someone else, I think in the Netherlands, made a spyglass, so that you could see distance. And he got the idea, hey, and he made the lenses even better. And then he realized, hey, I could look up in the sky and see stuff, right? So he basically comes up with support for the heliocentric, right? So the geocentric or Tychonic system says that we're fixed in where we are, right? And so that's the one model. The other model is the heliocentric, where the sun is the center and everything's going around it, right? And in school, that's what they told you was true, right? And it is. It's absolutely true. But so is the geocentric system. That's true too. So you could just look, the Earth is still, you could just look up and see everything going around, right? That's true too. Why must it be the case that if one is true, the other one has to be false? Aren't they two different perspectives of the same phenomena?
Because there's only one answer, and you have to look at it from the true perspective instead of.
Talking about the advancements in science allows us to, layer these truths upon one another.
Well, whenever we think of the heliocentric system, don't you always have to imagine it from out in space?
Unless the government's lying,
No, the government's not lying.
He lied a lot, but I don't think it was about this.
But so now let me add still more to this, right? Because we also know that the galactic center is what the whole galaxy is spinning around, right? You've seen images of the Milky Way as it looks like a great big whirlpool, right? And we're out on one of the kind of wings of that, and we are basically in an orbit. The whole solar system is in an orbit that travels around the galactic center roughly around 250 million years, once every 250 million years. But we're cruising. We're really cruising, like I think 450 kilometers per second the sun going in that orbit. And if you think about it, then when we so when we do that, we figure the sun, and by the way, it's not just traveling in a straight line because it's being influenced by the weight of like Jupiter and Saturn and other things in space, right? So the sun is kind of moving, right? And then along with the sun, we figure, well, we've got the Earth, which, let me draw the sun a couple of times here. So as the Earth is moving along, it's in front of the sun for a while, then it's working its way back, and then it works its way around the front again, right? Right? And so do all the other planets, so that they form kind of a inner working I'm not doing this to scale or anything, right? You know, but you can. You get the idea, right? And the other ones are.
So you're talking about that corkscrew that you showed us at the end of class?
Right, right. So in a sense, it looks more like a helix, a double helix, triple helix, 9,
Whatever.
however many. Right, you know, because so the people that are thrilled with this theory point out that everything that's alive is kind of shaped like that. Ooh, you know, that's kind of interesting, right? So if you're using that as the model for the way things are, notice that there is no orbits around the sun, because an orbit would be just a circle. Well, if we just kept going in a circle in one spot and the sun kept going, we're without the sun after a short little period of time, really, right? So obviously we're traveling along with the sun, but that means that we're not going in an orbit. We're kind of going along with kind of like a frequency curve with the sun and the other planets, right?
Thanks to gravity.
I mean, couldn't it be both? And we're still orbiting around the sun while it's orbiting around the center of the galaxy.
Well, I mean,
Assuming we're technically still
yeah,
in orbit.
the sun is. Why do we stay connected to the sun so closely?
It's gravitational.
So gravity. So who invented gravity?
We came up with it.
Who invented gravity?
No one invented it. We came with a concept that's been there.
Gravitas means heavy. So the reason things is because it's heavy,
I mean,
I guess.
which is what. Well, Sir Isaac Newton, maybe
right.
Galileo, Sir Isaac Newton together measured the speed. So it's really, but we now believe that gravity is false.
Who's we?
Yeah, really.
Contemporary scientists.
Do we?
what do you mean by
What
gravity?
explain?
Do you want to explain why that is?
Yeah.
Cool.
There's a guy named Albert Einstein.
Oh, jeez.
Said, I mean, that was the problem. You know, how do you explain? You know, because if something happened to the sun,
Making fun of the definition.
would we fly off?
Yeah.
Right? No. You know, we're still attached through gravity. Well, wait a minute. Where is it? We can't find it. There are gravitational waves, but they're really, 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 really small, and they're not coming from the sun. They're coming from like out.
Okay.
Yeah, they recently saw them, didn't they? Somewhere?
Yeah, they've recently just measured them, but they're like, did you see it?
Yeah.
Right? So it's not very much. But instead, so the reason I'm staying on the earth as I'm walking around is because so the Earth is spinning. So when I'm standing on my deck, my backyard, I look to the northeast, and I figure that's the direction I'm sailing, right? So my house is sailing along in that direction. So, like, if you're looking for the meteorite showers, the Pleiades or whatever, right? They're in that direction. That's most. So northeast, right? So you look that because we're moving. So this is basically this northeast, right? So the Earth is moving roughly 2,500 miles per hour,
Rotational speed?
right? Did I get it right?
No, I don't know. I can do it.
Because it's roughly, 24 hours. You have to go completely around the 25,000 miles. Am I close? I'm just
We
estimating.
can pretend.
You pretend, but it's moving,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So if I'm driving my car and I'm going to the east at 60 miles an hour, I'm going 2,560 miles an hour.
I'm kind of confused. Did you say it takes, how long does it take to go around the sun?
460 meters per second.
What did you?
How,
what did
how
you-
fast is it?
460 meters per second or 1,000 miles per hour is the rotational speed of the Earth.
You were a little bit off
Rotation.
I was off.
by about 800.
Well, shoot.
But you mean rotation as in rotation of the sun, not revolution around?
No, this is the rotation of the Earth by itself.
Okay, okay.
So just thinking about the Earth it's rotating each
Okay.
day,
Okay.
right? I thought it was like roughly 25,000 miles, and you divide that up. No, okay, so 1,000.
Its circumference is 40.075 kilometers.
Kilometers.
No, 40,000.
Divided by 6.
40,075 kilometers.
Okay.
I don't know how to translate.
So,
Yeah, no.
so we're spinning in that direction. So if I'm driving east in my car and I'm going 60 miles an hour, I'm adding 60 miles or 100 kilometers to
62 miles an hour, yeah.
to that speed. If I turn and I go west, now I'm going slower.
That's why Superman could turn back time.
I forgot all about that. I'm still thrilled with the cape because it just goes as fast as he's going. No, let's not go there. But the reason that I stay on the Earth is because my trajectory, I'm moving in space. Einstein says that everything goes in a straight line, but space is curved, right? Right. So the reason that, so the Earth is going this way and I'm going this way, and that's why it feels like I'm on the Earth. It's because I'm moving. If the Earth wasn't there, I would be moving in this direction. It's not because of gravity, it's because of our movement together, right? So of course, if I'm driving the car, and I'm turning and everything else, and I'm thinking the Earth is spinning, and I'm trying to drive from here to Anchorage, as I'm driving, if the Earth is spinning and I'm on the, so do I have to worry about whether or not the car is going to have traction problems? No. Because the model that Einstein gives us is not necessarily something I have to think about in order to drive my car or stand on my back deck. But Einstein gives us a model that says, this is really what's happening. There is no gravity. But guess what? We still use the old model for that, because guess what? It's so much easier. Right? But it's been surpassed by the new model, which says, right? So what do we think about all these different models? Then, to make it even more confusing,
Yeah, let's just preface it with that. Right.
just be careful, because that would really screw us up if we were always worried about this doing. Can you imagine? Yeah, you'd feel like you were drunk all the time. One step, two step. Not that I would know what that would feel like.
Of course not.
So we also get this is space-time continuum. This is also Einstein, right? And you were right here. Because this is your universe. Each of you are experiencing the universe from your own point of view, your own perspective. It is that way for you. So what sets this cone up, you have to think of it as kind of like a cone, right? Is how fast the speed of light is, right? C, easy, right? 180,000 miles per second,
Do you want to Google it?
roughly, something like that. So the only thing that can interact with you in your universe at this moment is something that's within the speed of light per second, per minute, per hour, right? So in the future, you go that way.
186 miles per second. 186,000.
86,000.
Yeah.
Thanks. And this is the past, right? This is now,
Okay.
like in Spaceballs.
Haven't watched it.
Have you seen that?
No,
Oh my gosh.
No.
No book says best.
Right? So as we go back into the past, more things could have interacted with my universe. Right now is always like this, because it's only what can interact with me right now. But as I go back into my past, speed of light travels farther, so the farther in my past you go, the more of the universe there is, and if you go into the future, the more of the universe there is, right? But all of the universe is as it is always. It's not changing at all. The only thing that's changing is my conscious perception of the universe. So if we had a time machine,
Which we don't, but yes. If we
well,
did.
theoretically, if we make one, right, I could maybe travel into the past and be all upset because my mom and dad I'm disappearing because my mom doesn't meet my dad. Right?
Well,
Or I could worry about the future, where the professor comes and says, Artie, it's your kids. I've got to go into the future to save my kids. Right?
You've watched that? That's so awesome.
Back to the future. Right? I want one of those cars. Wouldn't that be great?
I
But
heard those cars are terrible.
the thing is, if you go back into the past, paradoxically, it's supposed to not change, even if you're there or not, making your mother introduce to your father, right? That would be weird, right? And of course, you're not supposed to change the future either. But if you do, wow, that's really. Wait for the next Harry Potter book. Ooh, accursed child, right? Ooh, bad.
But then wouldn't that be physically impossible?
Well, Einstein seems to think that once we've invented a time machine, we can go into the future from that point on.
I agree.
Or you
And
can't
I
go
think they
behind it.
proved it, that you can, but you can never go back to the past because it doesn't abide by the law.
Unless you have the machine.
Well, you
Well,
can't
thanks
go
to
back
string
though.
theory, Right?
Well, if the machine is invented, like,
Time
was
travel
it
right now.
Huxley came up with the time machine, right? Theoretically,
That's 60 times.
if once you invented the machine, you could go back to that point at which the machine has been invented. So if you go to the future, you could go back to that point in the past. So once we invent a time machine, stuff is going to be weird,
That's sketchy.
right? But so here's the interesting thing. According to this model, motion is just an illusion of consciousness. Nothing actually moves. all of space is eternally fixed where it is.
So
Nothing.
that means you never have to worry about any of the tropes about destroying your future or your past if you do travel through time, because just like the Time Lord exists outside of that whole sphere of influence.
Or it gets worse, because some of the folks have come up with a multiverse and say that each time you make a decision, time splits, so that the one decision that you just made in this universe takes the universe this way, and the other one takes it this way. Of course, you're making decisions, and you're, you know, so the universe is constantly splitting and splitting and splitting and splitting into a whole bunch of different multiverses. But all of them are permanent and fixed. In fact, the neatest thing about this is, that means that my soul is eternal too. So that takes me back to my Roman Catholic.
So
say that,
what-
you know,
Where would they go then? Would it be like the Doctor Strange kind of like Dark Verse, the alternate dimension where
they're
everything's-
parallel somehow.
Yeah.
Yes,
Like how would we get
So-
the veil?
I
So
don't know where they are.
so
Not here.
if you travel as supposedly you can, and if you travel as fast as the speed of light, then the time from your perspective stops. So when you have the time machine, wouldn't you have to be traveling at least close to the speed of light, and if you want to preserve yourself as who you are when you travel time to the future? So wouldn't you be at a constant
There-
movement?
There is a
Which
new
is-
book out on time by the same guy that wrote Faster. He's written a couple books. He's a physicist. It'd be an interesting book to try to look at that. But here's where I think ties into the whole question I have posed today. This is a different model. In this model, I don't know how evolutionary theory works. Because if you think about it, I mean, physicists talk about this. They believe that this is the case. It's not my fault. I'm not really, don't blame me, right? Don't shoot the messenger, etc., right? Check this stuff. This cone is on the internet, and you can see how it works, right? But the thing is that if this is the case, the dinosaurs are still there in the past. And the future of the earth is already sitting there in the future waiting for us. Your whole life is essentially already there. From your birth to your death, right? What's interesting is your consciousness is moving from the one point in that life to the next, right? So it's our consciousness moving through time. By the way, we might not all be moving through time at the same speed. They're just kind of interconnecting. We think, do I know you're really there? Are you there now while I'm here now? Am I, how do I know? Let's not go there, right? But the worry here is, so in this model, all motion is an illusion of consciousness. None of it's really happening, right? So that's, how many models do I have now? We can create more models too, right? And they're all fun, and they're all true. Even though it seems odd that, well, if we say that the earth is fixed, and by the way, in this particular case, if you're the focus of the universe and you're here, obviously the whole universe is centered on you. So that would mean that the earth is fixed in the center of the universe for you, right? But I mean, think about how all this works, and we've got this model, we have this model, we have the Tychonic model. The epicycle thing was trash, so that was wrong. You don't have to keep them once the data proves that the model's false. Right? And mass makes it seem like the Earth-centered model is false, but if you skip out on the mass, which you can do, right? because other models don't require it. So how many models do we have? And they all are tools. They're conceptual tools that we can use in order to think and plan and understand how the universe is going to be in different ways, right? So each of these tools enables us to do different kinds of things that we enjoy doing. And so the only mistake you could make is thinking that one of the models is true and all the other ones are false, because that weakens your own collection of tools. Why do that to yourself, right? Now let me tie this into what is it like to be a bat? How many of you got a kick out of Thomas Nagel?
He was kind of odd.
Uh-huh.
He's British.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hard to grasp.
I mean, I got in trouble for using this many long sentences in an essay, so,
Oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like.
Yeah, there
really?
were some run-ons.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Well, doesn't Nagel mean nail in German?
no idea, like in the comment.
Yeah, yeah.
In a call.
And so, do you feel like Thomas Nagel nailed it? Maybe not. But so what's the point he's trying to make? I underline.
Yeah, actually, it does mean
really,
nail.
really
That's-
confusing.
it does
Das
mean
ist
nail.
nicht meine Schuld. It's not my fault.
British and German?
Nagel?
Yeah.
He's British.
And Nagel is not a German surname.
That's true. So I don't know where they came from. So, glasses. I have to have glasses. My eyes are aging. I can still see fine to drive, though. So, the problem is not confined to exotic cases, like bats, but also between one person and another. How do I know what it's like to be you? Especially because I believe you're female, yes?
I should hope so.
And wow, I'm sure I don't know what that would be like.
That's not easy word.
But even so, two females don't necessarily know what it's like to be that other person, right? But, so this brings us to the edge of a topic, I'm on page 303, that requires much more discussion than I can give it here, namely the relation between facts on the one hand and conceptual schemes or systems of representation on the other. I've been using the word model. So I mentioned Stephen Hawking's new book, The Grand Design, that he wrote with Mladenov. Someone, I think, mentioned that when didn't I have the picture up of the book?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes?
Yes, you did.
So what's he talking about here? We conceptualize, using language and other symbols, abstract models of our phenomena that we're experiencing. And thanks to those models that we create, because of our incredible minds, we're able to predict things, see things in the future that tomorrow it's going to be sunny, all that kind of stuff. We're out of milk, so we need to go to the store and get milk, and I know where the milk is and roughly how much it is and all that sort of thing, right? We use these models in order to do all the things we do in life, including figuring out what our goals are. Remember the meta-narrative idea? That how am I going to know what my values are? Why get up in the morning? Because I have goals. I want to act according to the roles that I believe are valuable. So I want to be a good father. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good citizen. I want to be a good teacher. Even though, of course, I'm just pretending all of those, because we're all actors, and all the world's a stage, right? So we're just acting. There are multiple roles and our entrances and exits, etc. Sorry if I'm butchering Shakespeare, but you get the idea, right? So I'm conceiving of my life using a conceptual model that makes my life valuable and real for me. I might learn that this model's not a very successful model at some point and have to change my model. That's very traumatic for me.
Because people don't like change.
Well, it depends on what kind of change it is. I mean, if you're starving to death, suddenly having enough money to eat every day is a nice change. I'm glad about that. Yeah. Right? You know. But then discovering that because you have enough money, you can eat every day and say you're getting fat and the doctor says you have to go on a diet. Well, crap, that's a rotten change. You know, so, yeah, so, you know, there's good change, bad change. But in general, if my whole value scheme has changed, which school is supposed to do to you? And why did they persecute Galileo?
I'm not sure.
The church is going to be, the church is going to, for one thing, you're being an idiot, saying that the earth moves. We need to put you in your house and lock you up so that you don't make a fool of yourself.
And they did it because they care. That's the crazy part. Like the crazy.
Pope
part
Urban
is
was a
very
good
hard.
friend.
Huh?
Pope Urban VIII was actually a lifelong friend of Galileo, according to
Whatever we have left.
biographies and stuff. We used to play tag together. No, I don't.
Was that when did they invent the game of tag? Like was that?
Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel?
Cain won.
Wow.
Okay, I'm not well versed in that whole scripture. So
Boom, you're it. Hey, come on. You're going to chase me now. Hey, wake up. No, I'm sorry.
It was
Sorry.
a prototype.
That was a prototype.
And
Yeah,
they
that.
worked on it later.
Sorry about that.
a blasphemer over here.
So you see what I'm trying to do? These models are conceptual schemas that enable us to picture the universe as a reality because of that model. The model enables us to do that. In fact, today it's confusing because we've got lots of different models, and we're now at the point where we understand that language is our frontier, because we're trying to figure out how language enables us to conceive of our experiences the way we do. We know things that, different languages give us different impressions of the way the world works. So that's why I'll talk about languages as like an operating system. So different languages enable different apps to be loaded on your computer than other languages, or conflicts, right?
But isn't still English the most versatile? Because the point of view, perception, place in time, and subject are all independently kind of constructed within.
It's definitely the most incredibly expansive one. And English, I think, is probably going to beat out English.
That was a joke that I heard earlier this month. What happened? What's the difference between English and English?
Well, from what I understand, other foreign people, like Chinese and Malay, both learn English. And then they don't learn Malay and Chinese. That's their native language, but when they go to a business meeting, they speak English. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Somewhat.
It's the business language. Well,
It's the business language.
Right.
Last night I was watching a couple live videos. It was, I guess, after midnight, so what was live for me was like India. There was one in, I don't really know where it was. It was definitely Europe someplace. It was UNESCO. They were all talking, and every single person that was talking sounded like they had a foreign accent, but they were all talking English.
yeah.
So the meeting was in English. There were no Americans there.
I know.
No
that's-
British people
that's
there.
funny.
But they're all sitting there talking English to one another. Right? Well, guess what? Americans if you go to those places, they don't understand us for some reason. I don't know, but I talk the English, you know? How come they don't understand me? In other words, you know, the English that's international may not be the same English that you speak, depending on your regional accent.
Was that like cultural appropriation and I should be offended now, or?
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Yeah, that's okay.
yes, you should be offended.
Awesome.
For what?
Appropriating your-
accent?
No, appropriating your
No,
English
for being
language.
hypocrites.
Oh, that's a joke.
Oh.
Well, I mean, you know, the problem we have with people that take offense at things you say is that some of those people are absolutely professionals at learning how to take offense. And will take offense at the,
Whatever.
Smallest.
Merest calculable
Sp-
slight.
weirdest thing, I was using the Oculus Rift looking through Baltimore, or not Baltimore, Buffalo. So I kind of just cruise, you know how the Google car just keeps driving around, and I you know, just click the arrow, looking around. I'm basically going down Washington Street, if you're from Buffalo, and I hit Main Street and I turn left. The first time ever while I was doing that kind of thing in a city, I'm going by a guy, and the guy gave me the finger
Are you serious?
That's awesome.
in Buffalo. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously doing that.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
you know which finger I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He saw the Google car going by, and he gave it the finger,
Took
and
his
of course
opportunity.
got in the picture. So now, whenever we look at Buffalo, at Washington and Maine, there's this guy giving everybody the finger.
That's insane. That's awesome. Talk about learning the town.
Yeah, exactly. So, is this point kind of clear how it works? That
None of this is clear.
none of this is clear.
I mean, it's philosophy. Come on.
Well,
It's never gonna be clear.
so animals, my dog, so I've got an animal, I can ask it, does the earth go around the sun or does the sun go around the earth? My dog's response will be, has no clue what I'm talking about.
Or does
Looking for a treat. You know, if there's a treat in it, he'll go, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much how my dog. Deer, moose, monkeys, dolphins,
What,
birds.
chimpanzees? Was it just chimpanzees or gorillas with the sign language? Gorillas?
Yeah, but I've never seen a rhesus monkey trying to figure out whether the earth goes around the sun or the sun goes around the earth. I think that's beyond their linguistic capacity.
Oh, dolphins go, you just can't ask them.
Dolphins might.
Ravens might know. Ravens could.
This has nothing to do with anything, but if you're in a swimming pool, even if it's crowded, on a hot sunny day and it's Hawaii,
Don't be in swimming pool.
and you're on one corner of the pool and your daughter is at the other corner of the pool, and there's like 50 kids splashing around in between you, and you go underwater and you go,
Yeah.
Hear each other.
you will hear one another clear as a bell.
Yeah.
Really?
It works. The dolphins invented the perfect language for being underwater. That's amazing.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I physically tested this myself.
Yeah.
10 miles.
Because you
Put your
can,
dog on there.
and by the way, try talking underwater. It doesn't work.
No.
But you can.
Oh, so it has to be
It's
at a
great
higher
for scuba
frequency.
diving.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is it? You've
Mhm.
tried? So.
You do it 60 feet below surface, so.
Wow, that's scary. I have
I mean, that's all
drowning
fine.
dreams, so I'm never going to do that.
Why not?
Ugh.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
It's
Do it.
terrible.
Do it. You won't regret
No,
it.
no.
Good luck, man.
That's part of that
You learn lots
backwards-
You
down
know what?
there.
I get to see plenty of that stuff with my Oculus.
Come on.
People go
It's
down
not
there, they
this-
take pictures, and I'm like, oh, so that's what it looks down.
Oh, you don't want to
But
sleep
it's
with
so
that?
peaceful.
No.
Why?
Because I want to live forever.
It's not possible though.
That's not.
So far, so good. That's a joke. But so, okay, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to say that language is an incredibly powerful tool. it gives us powers that no other animals, as far as we know, have. Maybe aliens somewhere, some other planet. But what those tools are have been maturing and getting more and more powerful as we've lived. I imagine the first couple of tools were, rock, whatever, right? Sharp rock, I don't know how that happened because we don't have enough background material to figure it out. Right? We can look at some of the things that they left and so on. We look at when the Greeks started writing their alphabet, which seemed to be pretty significant because the alphabet seems to represent the shape of the mouth when you're making O or theta or mu, et cetera, right? So they could construct an alphabet, and Korean's this way too, right? Korean, the letters look like the shape of the sound.
It's also kanji.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
it didn't, they developed their own language. The words, yeah, what you just said.
Yeah, some of the Korean linguists that I knew said that they learned the kanji or whatever, the letter.